Evelyn Hardwick stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse apartment, gazing out at the twinkling city lights below. At 68, she cut an elegant figure, her silver hair styled in a sleek bob, her lithe frame draped in a silk robe. She sipped her gin and tonic, savouring the bitter bite as she reflected on how drastically her life had changed in the past year. A successful fashion magazine editor, Evelyn had spent decades building her career and reputation. She was widely respected in the industry, known for her keen eye and uncompromising standards. But for all her professional accomplishments, her personal life had grown stagnant. Her husband of 40 years, Richard, had passed away 2 years prior. Their marriage had been one of comfort and mutual respect, rather than passion, and Evelyn found herself unmoored in the wake of his death. She never expected to find love again, let alone with someone half her age. The memory of her first encounter with Lucas Reeves still sent a thrill through her. It had been a typical Tuesday morning, and Evelyn was running late for an important meeting. As she hurried down the sidewalk, her Louboutins clicking against the pavement, she collided with a young man rushing in the opposite direction. "I'm so sorry," he said, steadying her with a strong hand on her elbow. "Are you all right?" Evelyn looked up, ready to brush off the apology and continue on her way. But the words died in her throat as she met the most captivating pair of green eyes she'd ever seen. "I'm fine," she managed after a moment. "No harm done." The man smiled, and Evelyn felt her heart skip a beat. He was undeniably handsome, tall and lean, with tousled dark hair and a strong jawline. But it was more than just his physical appearance that drew her in. There was an intensity in his gaze, a spark of something that made her feel truly seen for the first time in years. "I'm Lucas," he said, offering his hand. "Lucas Reeves." "Evelyn Hardwick," she replied, taking his hand. The touch lingered a moment too long, and Evelyn felt a jolt of electricity pass between them. As it turned out, Lucas was a talented photographer in his late 30s. Their chance encounter led to a commission. Evelyn's magazine needed new headshots for their editorial staff. What started as a professional relationship quickly blossomed into something more. During their first photo session, Evelyn found herself captivated by Lucas's artistic vision and youthful energy. He saw her not as a powerful editor or a woman past her prime, but as a subject of beauty and complexity. "You're extraordinary," Lucas murmured as he adjusted the lighting. "There's a depth to you that the camera loves." Evelyn felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. She tried to dismiss it as simple flattery, but as the weeks passed and their meetings became more frequent, she couldn't deny the growing attraction. Their first kiss happened on a rainy evening after a particularly intense photo shoot. Lucas had captured Evelyn in a moment of vulnerability, her guard down, her eyes reflecting years of triumphs and heartaches. As they reviewed the photos, huddled close in his dimly lit studio, the tension between them finally snapped. Lucas's lips met hers, with a hunger that took Evelyn's breath away. She responded with equal fervour, her fingers tangling in his hair as years of pent-up passion poured out. When they finally broke apart, both were trembling. "We shouldn't," Evelyn whispered, even as her body yearned for more. "Why not?" Lucas challenged, his eyes blazing with desire and something deeper. Understanding, perhaps even love. That night marked the beginning of their affair. It was intoxicating, all-consuming. Evelyn felt alive in a way she hadn't in decades. Lucas worshipped her body, tracing every line and curve with reverence, making her feel desirable and powerful. But with the highs came the lows. Evelyn struggled with guilt, both over the age difference and the secrecy. She knew her colleagues would never understand, that society would judge her harshly. Lucas, for his part, battled his own demons, the fear of being seen as an opportunist, the challenge of loving a woman with such a complicated past. Their arguments were as intense as their lovemaking. "You're ashamed of me," Lucas accused one night after Evelyn had introduced him as her photographer at a work event. "That's not true," Evelyn retorted, her voice breaking. "I'm trying to protect you, to protect us both." The push and pull of their relationship took its toll. Evelyn found herself distracted at work, making uncharacteristic mistakes. Lucas's photography suffered as he poured more and more of himself into their tumultuous affair. Just when it seemed they might break under the strain, a crisis brought everything into sharp focus. Evelyn's daughter, Claire, was in a car accident. As Evelyn sat in the hospital, sick with worry, it was Lucas who appeared at her side, offering unwavering support. "I'm here," he said simply, taking her hand, "for as long as you need me." In that moment, Evelyn realized that what she felt for Lucas transcended mere passion or a midlife crisis. It was love, deep and true, despite, or perhaps because of, their differences. But their happiness was short-lived. As Evelyn spent more time at the hospital with Claire, Lucas grew increasingly restless and insecure. He began drinking heavily, and Evelyn caught him flirting with a young nurse on more than one occasion. When she confronted him about it, Lucas lashed out. "What did you expect?" he shouted. "I'm not some toy you can put on a shelf when you're busy with your real life." The words stung, but Evelyn couldn't entirely blame him. She had been keeping him at arm's length, afraid to fully integrate him into her world. The argument escalated, and Lucas stormed out of her apartment, slamming the door behind him. For days, Evelyn heard nothing from him. She threw herself into work and caring for Claire, trying to ignore the ache in her chest. But late one night, as she was leaving the office, she saw a familiar figure waiting by her car. Lucas looked terrible, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice hoarse. "I was an ass. I love you, Evelyn. And it kills me that we have to hide." Evelyn's resolve crumbled. She pulled him close, inhaling his familiar scent. "I love you too," she whispered. "We'll figure this out, together." They agreed to be more open about their relationship, consequences be damned. Evelyn introduced Lucas to Claire, who was surprisingly supportive after her initial shock. They began attending events together, no longer hiding behind professional pretenses. The reaction was mixed. Some of Evelyn's friends were supportive, admiring her for following her heart. Others were less kind, whispering about midlife crises and gold diggers. Evelyn's position at the magazine came under scrutiny, with some board members questioning her judgment. Through it all, Lucas remained a steadfast presence at her side. He encouraged her to fight for her career, reminding her of all she had accomplished. When the stress became overwhelming, he would whisk her away for weekend getaways, helping her reconnect with herself and their love. But just as they seemed to be finding their footing, a new challenge emerged. Lucas received an offer for a prestigious photography assignment, a year-long project documenting indigenous cultures in South America. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, one that could catapult his career to new heights. Evelyn knew she should be happy for him, but the thought of being separated for so long filled her with dread. "You should go," she said, forcing a smile. "This is what you've always wanted." Lucas studied her face, conflicted. "What I want is you," he said softly. "Say the word and I'll stay." The offer hung between them, heavy with implication. Evelyn was tempted, so tempted, to ask him to stay. But she knew that if she did, a part of him would always resent her for holding him back. "Go," she said finally, her voice firm despite the tears threatening to fall. "Chase your dreams. I'll be here when you get back." The night before Lucas left was bittersweet. They made love with a desperate intensity, both trying to memorize every touch, every sensation. As they lay tangled in the sheets afterward, Evelyn traced the lines of Lucas's face, committing them to memory. "Promise me you'll be careful," she murmured. Lucas kissed her tenderly. "I promise, and I promise to come back to you." The months that followed were some of the hardest of Evelyn's life. She threw herself into her work, taking the magazine in bold new directions. Her innovative ideas silenced the critics who had questioned her capabilities, and she was hailed as a visionary in the industry. But the nights were lonely. She and Lucas spoke when they could, but reception was spotty in the remote areas he was visiting. Evelyn found herself clinging to every brief phone call, every hastily typed email. As Lucas's assignment stretched from 1 year to 18 months, Evelyn's resolve began to waver. She was proud of all he was accomplishing, but the distance was taking its toll. When a handsome colleague began showing interest in her, Evelyn was surprised to find herself tempted. James was closer to her age, successful in his own right, and clearly smitten with her. He understood the demands of her career in a way Lucas never quite had. One night, after too many glasses of wine at a work event, Evelyn found herself in James's arms. The kiss was pleasant enough, but it lacked the spark, the all-consuming passion she felt with Lucas. Evelyn pulled away, feeling guilty and conflicted. "I'm sorry," she said. "I can't." James nodded, understanding in his eyes. "He's a lucky man," he said simply. The almost affair was a wake-up call for Evelyn. She realised that despite the challenges, what she had with Lucas was rare and precious. She threw herself into planning for his return, determined to make their relationship work. But fate had other plans. 2 weeks before Lucas was due to come home, Evelyn received a phone call that changed everything. There had been an accident, a treacherous mountain path, a vehicle that never arrived at its destination. The next days passed in a blur of frantic phone calls and agonising uncertainty. When they finally found the wreckage, there were no survivors. Evelyn felt as though her world had shattered. The grief was all-consuming, made even more painful by the fact that she had to mourn in secret. Few people knew the true nature of her relationship with Lucas, and she found herself unable to fully express her loss. In her darkest moments, Evelyn regretted ever letting Lucas go. If she had asked him to stay, he would still be alive. The guilt and the grief threatened to overwhelm her. It was Claire who finally pulled her out of her despair. "Mom," she said gently, "Lucas wouldn't want this for you. He loved your strength, your passion. Don't let that die with him." Slowly, painfully, Evelyn began to heal. She established a scholarship in Lucas's name for young photographers, ensuring his legacy would live on. She wrote a memoir, pouring out the story of their love on the pages. The book became a bestseller, praised for its raw honesty and its message that love knows no boundaries, not age, not distance, not even death. 5 years after Lucas's death, Evelyn stood once again at the window of her penthouse, watching the city lights flicker below. She was older now, with new lines etched on her face, but her eyes still held a spark of the passion Lucas had awakened in her. On her desk lay an advance copy of her newest book, a collection of Lucas's photographs paired with her words. It was a celebration of their love, and of the man who had taught her it was never too late to embrace life fully. Evelyn raised her glass in a silent toast. "To you, my love," she whispered. "Thank you for teaching me how to live again." As she turned away from the window, Evelyn felt a sense of peace settle over her. Her affair with Lucas had been tumultuous, painful, and far too brief. But it had also been transformative, awakening parts of herself she thought long dormant. Whatever the future held, Evelyn knew she would face it with the passion and courage Lucas had inspired in her. Their love story might have ended, but its impact would last a lifetime.